My learning objectives today are number one, that you will understand about the novel I have chosen to discuss. Number two, that you will understand what students can gain through studying it. And number three, that you will understand what exercises might help students in getting the most out of studying this book. First of all, the novel I have chosen is an American novel called My Ántonia, written by a woman called Willa Cather and published in 1918. Willa Cather was born in Virginia in 1873 and died in New York in 1947. She wrote many novels, but two of her most famous ones are O Pioneers and this one, My Ántonia, both of which deal with the lives of pioneer farmers on the prairie lands of Nebraska in the late 19th century. Willa Cather herself moved with her parents, aged 8, to live on a ranch in Nebraska, surrounded by newly arrived immigrants from Central and Northern Europe. The novel has a narrator, Jim Burton, who looks back nostalgically at his youth in Nebraska and at the lives and struggles of his European neighbours. Jim is an orphan who is sent to live with his paternal grandparents who have made a new life on the Great Plains. The focus of Jim's story is a Czech family called the Shimerdas, and especially their eldest daughter, called in Czech Antonia. To Jim, his European neighbours seem more colourful and cultured than the slightly dull, native-born Americans. The Czechs, Swedes, Russians and Danes bring some imagination and old-world glamour to the flat prairie lands. Jim idealizes these emigrants, their backgrounds, and their rich old languages. This mirrors Willa Cather's admiration for her childhood neighbours in Nebraska, particularly the womenfolk from whom she heard stories about old Europe. Cather succeeds in recreating for her readers the new world of Nebraska and its prairie, with its babel of languages and cultures, such as she herself experienced as a young girl. The European settlers are free to create new lives on the empty Great Plains, since the tribes that once lived there have been herded into reservations, a fact unmentioned in the novel. Jim Burton, our guide to this new world, is totally open to new people, new cultures, and languages, and is especially sympathetic to the ups and downs of the novel's heroine, Antonia. Antonia for him symbolizes the courageous pioneer farmers who struggle to turn wild prairie into productive farmland. So why should second year students study this novel as opposed to any of the other texts on the recommended list? For me, teenagers should get the chance to study novels that give them a sense of wonder and a sense of life's possibilities. My Ántonia contains a suicide, a scandal surrounding an illegitimate baby, and the evil that is done by the town moneylender. However, it remains a novel filled with a sense that life is an adventure and that hardships can be overcome. Furthermore, the core philosophy in this novel is one of openness to new people, different cultures, and unfamiliar languages. For Jim, the new European settlers promised to renew the United States and fill it with a new energy and a splash of European culture. Over the course of the story, the wild plains become productive farmland, and poor immigrant families become prosperous farmers, whose children can have a better life than anything they could have dreamed of. Thus, this is a feel-good read in the best sense of that expression. In terms of the junior cycle statements of learning, there are three which I think are especially connected to this novel. Number 6, that students appreciate how diverse beliefs and traditions contribute to the community. Number 9, that students understand the origins of social and economic aspects of the world. Both of these ones are well served by My Ántonia, which works as a celebration of diversity and of invigorating difference. Studying this novel should help to open students' minds up to the wider world. In this, the novel's themes should connect nicely with some of what students will be doing as part of geography, CSPE and religion. Insofar as English as a subject is primarily focused on improving the language skills in students L1, SOL number 3 is of huge importance, namely that students appreciate and can interpret texts. Willa Cather wrote this novel in the style of a fireside yarn. The reader has the impression of a thoughtful, sensitive observer telling him or her a story. In terms of the key skills of the junior cycle, I feel that managing information and thinking will be covered by the class engaging with the novel through close reading, exercises, and researching a little of the historical background to the narrative events and the personal background that prompted Willa Cather to write this novel. The key skill of working with others can be fostered through some drama and education work, as will be mentioned a little later. The core skill of literacy is, however, the primary skill that will be developed over the time that the class grapple with My Ántonia. A novel has nothing to offer but written language. So, students must develop their comprehension abilities and their power of written expression in order to respond to the book. What exercises might help students to get to grips with this novel? I have put up some of the questions that I would ask students to answer as homework, having possibly prepped the more challenging ones during lesson time. These questions comprise a mix of factual ones and more demanding higher order questions, and a query on the romanticism of the novel's narrator. More interesting and challenging still is an assignment to write a short narrative entitled My Jim, in which Ántonia Jamerda explains what Jim Burton's friendship has meant to her since her arrival with her family from Central Europe. Another exercise task I have thought of is a eulogy that an older Jim could deliver at Antonia's funeral, with this being acted out in class. There is scope too for a dramatic scene where Jim and Ántonia meet at a later stage of their lives, filling each other in on the events that have happened subsequent to the novel's events. Such a scene could be worked up in pairs and acted out in class. Given the novel's setting, it might be an idea to ask students to prepare wall sheets on topics such as European emigration to the US and the settlement of the Great Plains from the 1870s onwards. So, I hope that I have fulfilled my task in explaining to you about the novel I have chosen, discussing why it might be a good choice for second year students of English, and finally describing at least some of the tasks I would set for a class group studying My Ántonia by Willa Cather. Thank you.